one more little metaphor, as you're about to get up. Imagine what I call a learner scope. This is a metaphor for how technology in the classroom and everything could work. A learner scope. Everybody's familiar with a microscope, and it's got a series of different rings on it with lenses and what have you. Think for a moment as if the object of a learner's inquiry or a learning objective handed down by the curriculum gods was on the slide and put into the learner scope. And that what we were doing with the student was saying, look, there's all these lenses. Some lenses will allow you to look at what's on the slide through a more scientific approach, or a more day-to-day grounded approach, or a more poetic or metaphoric or beautiful, see the beauty of it, or see the history of it, or see the human drama involved in it, whatever X might be that's on the slide. So I had these different lenses, if you will, to be able to see through the different representations that are pathways to what that essentially means. And that en route through any one of those pathways, I had, as I changed it to this lens or that lens, there was another ring of lenses down below that one, which were whenever I encountered a word or a particular chunk of video or sound that I didn't understand, then I could use these other lenses to tune into that till that was clear to me. So between these lenses, I could tune into whatever different bias sensorily or cognitively worked for me. In another level, I could tune through any of the elements that I might be seeing that I didn't understand and tune from there. And I didn't have to understand the learner scope. The only thing I'd understand is when it felt right and when it was clear to me and when it wasn't clear to me. In other words, the only thing I had to do was use my own uncertainties and curiosities to adjust this thing. And out of that, I would go home. And then I could move the slide or say, well, I don't want to watch this anymore, and jump to some other thing altogether. So that I disconnect the notion of navigation from the notion of following through my meaning needs in any one place I'm trying to go home. Now, that's the learner scope. And that's also another model for the technology. So take Nintendo, Darren's radar helper, the various conversations we've been having, the purpose to be the gymnasium, the exercise equipment, and the learner scope, and put them together. That's the context of the design for technology that we proceed from. Now, add to that there's wires coming out of the learner scope, and they come back over here to a teacher scope, and also out of the learner scope to what we might call a curriculum scope, right? And any number of other scopes that might be distributed administratively and otherwise, such that every time the learner is changing one of these lenses, then where they were in the space of resource materials and the kind of things they were asking for flows back and is now visually summarized for the teacher. I can see where the whole class has been, what they've asked for, what they repeatedly had trouble with because they continued to hit in different ways, what kind of particular biases and preferences. And over here at curriculum development, where I was developing the stuff that was on that slide, I can also see what was working and what wasn't working every time somebody turns to those lenses. So that's another component of the learner scope metaphors. So let's turn on the technology a little bit and play with it. Let's go all the way down at the risk of some people sleeping.
Yeah. I don't think if I sleep on this anyway.
Now, this is the learner interface. This is the main display area. This is the control panel. For people with left-hand bias, this is switch over to here. Frankly, though, while I want to say that there's certain aspects about even the imaging of the metaphor of the learner interface that I have up here, none of the way that it appears is what I want to talk about. I mean, there's going to be different visual versions of the interface. For kindergartners, it would look entirely different. For teenagers that, for example, might like thinking that they were in a meaning spaceship, able to fire sensors and what have you at words and do various things to look in the forward or aft viewer to be able to see things differently, that there would be different visual metaphors and interface metaphors. But what this represents right now is what the process level interface would be for a learner interface between the curriculum content and the learner. Our intention right now is to design this, and what you're looking at is a prototype running in HyperCard. Most of its file handling and what I'll call attribute management software or code has nothing to do with HyperCard. HyperCard is the top-level interface to it, and most of the workhorse part of this is our own stuff sitting underneath it. We intend to develop the Lunar Interface in such a fashion that this is running on a television set. Again, it might look different. I have a view of a kind of an L-shaped version of this, like you see in kind of CNN reports, where it goes like so, and there's kind of an L shape, right? And be powered by an interface that resides in any one of the game machine's cartridges, so that the interface and all of its processing technology is in the cartridges of game machines. And the content's pumped in via network, phone systems, slow-speed CD-ROMs, and other things we can talk about. This would also run on any MS-DOS machine or Macintosh. Now, the final visual appearance of this will differ across these machines, but the point is that once a learner's had an experience with a learner interface, no matter what machine, whether it's a television set at home, or it's a Macintosh in a lab, or an MS-DOS machine, the basic idea of how to use it, in other words, how to use themselves, is transferable across them all. We threw out the idea of the desktop, or DOS, or any of those things, and asked the question, what kind of an interface should evolve if we were concerned with all the issues we talked about earlier. The other thing that from a business point of view and a kind of mission point of view is that it's real important to us that we develop something that's pervasive. You talked about, will it take 25 years? I mean, we're not interested in that. The point is, how is it that something like this can become pervasive, meaning that it's sufficiently inexpensive and they've got the right balance of performance and price and platform capabilities so that it can become pervasive within the prevailing economics of the education system and consumer computing, consumer gaming. So the control panel. There's a bunch of technologies. I'm not going to get to them all. We'll go through this. This is the control panel, as I mentioned. Up here, this is kind of a reset, a book reset, and it has to deal with certain hardware functions. This deals with elemental meaning needs. In other words, what happens when I encounter a word, term, phrase, acronym, place, component of an image, component of a sound stream that I didn't get. I need more about that. I'm curious. I need to see it rather than read it. I need to experience it in some other way. I have an elemental meaning need. So this is where I would go to get situationally relevant references that would support those kind of needs. This deals with construct levels. What happens when I understood the piece parts, but I didn't get what this was about? This deals with jumping around in a nonlinear fashion. This is a compass, which like sets the compass for all the different biases I have as a learner, my preferences for how I like things to appear. This is a collector's case. Through here, it's as if I had 5 or 6 different colored highlighters in my pocket, and I could move them across anything I encounter in my travels, and it would just suck up copies of that and stick it into any one of the 6 collector cases that I selected from here. And this is for next sequence advance if I don't want to go nonlinear. This is other types of help. Now, this is a learner interface with some content in it, and actually let me change it now. Went into the library. Huh.